Hi everyone, welcome back to Poetology. This video comes very late. I have been busy with projects I will talk about in my next video, and I also spent some time redecorating this room. And I am sorry to say it's already February. I can't believe January went by this fast. I would like to talk about my favorite books of 2024 in novels, poetry, non-fiction, and a magazine I really liked. Last year I read more than usual. I listed 133 titles. This includes all sorts of things from zine to short chapbooks and all the way to large novels. For example, I read The Odyssey. That was one of the longer books I read. But I include everything in that list. My favorite of all the novels I read in 2024 was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. And I listened to it in audiobook format when I was in Poland, and I really enjoyed it. It probably helped that I spent a lot of that time in a hammock in the garden of the little cottage me and my partner were staying at, but the story itself was really remarkable. It's about video game making, video game design, but more than that, it's about the friendship between Sam and Sadie, and it is a complicated friendship that spans an entire lifetime, but goes through so many different stages. And I really loved the slow pacing of the book. I liked the way it was written. I really liked the sensibility that runs through it, the emotions just under the surface. And I was also interested in the theme of video game design and how this comes to be. So that is the one I would recommend the most. Runners up in the novel category are The Secret History by Danne, and I made a video about dark academia novels, so have a look at that video if you want to know more about this title. And towards the end of the year, I also read Esme Wei-Jun Wang, The Border of Paradise. Esme Wang is best known for her non-fiction work on schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, but her novel was really good and very surprising. It gets dark, it gets uncomfortable, and it takes you places that you did not expect. So this traces the story of the Novak family across a few generations, and it starts in post-war Brooklyn and moves to colonial Taiwan and then rural California. Although it borrows from certain genres and is quite gothic in some way, it also is new in the way that it approaches the subject matter and in the places that the story takes us. It's a great multicultural novel, but it also was uncomfortable and memorable. So that's for the fiction category. Now, in poetry, if you've followed my video on the Forward Prize, you won't be too surprised to know that I've selected Goodlord by Ella Frears as my favorite poetry book. And that's not necessarily for the poetry itself, although obviously the poetry is amazing, but the form was what really spoke to me. I love the idea of a novel in verse, but this is not a novel either. It's an email. It's a long email to a landlord. And it talks about so many subjects around renting and places of work and places where one lives, and also artistic residencies in various spaces. It talked about hunting in a surprising way, and I just really loved the way that Ella Frears approached this book and the idea of writing an email in such a long-winded poetry format, because this book is over 200 pages long. It's quite approachable though, because the words have a lot of space around them, lines can breathe, and so it's not difficult to read by any means, and it doesn't feel that long. The next two books inspired me more in some ways in their approach of something I would like to write about, because I am a poet with a chronic illness myself. I read the anthology Stares and Whispers last year, Deaf and Disabled Poets Write Back, which was edited by Sandra Allen, Kairani Barocca and Daniel Sluman. This anthology has several chapters titled Bodies, Rules, Maps, Dreams and Legends, and it just gives me such a huge mine of inspiration for how I might write about illness and bodily matters myself. I still don't know exactly how that will percolate, but it's been a big influence for me, and I think it will help me write in the future. And this year I'm hoping to make some headway into that sort of writing. In the same line, I'd like to also mention Daniel Sluman's Single Window, because this is a year in a couple's life, both of whom live with various forms of disability and illness, and it's a year when they were stuck indoors because they were unable to go outside due to their disabilities. And so the entire collection writes about that year, including many individual poems, but also pictures. And if you'd like to know more about this, you should listen to the interview I did with Daniel Sluman on this channel not long ago. It will be up here. Just click on it and listen to that, and you'll have a much better idea of why this collection spoke to me. Now we're going to move to non-fiction, and this memoir really stood out for me. It's titled My Good Bright Wolf by Sarah Moss, and I love Sarah Moss's novels. I think I have read all of them. I believe I have. And I really love her writing. I love how witty she is, dry and witty. Her sense of humor is very dry. And she's also extremely observant of lots of details, especially in the domestic sphere, but not just. And she really talks about women's relationship to domestic life and professional life, how they manage to make their way through life as mothers and all the tensions that come with it. But this memoir, talked about Sarah Moss's upbringing and how it set her up to have insecurities around body and food. And the second part of the memoir is about a relapse into anorexia that she had as an adult. For me, it was so important because I have read a lot of memoirs and novels about anorexia and also other eating disorders, and most of them, if not all of them, are about teenage years or young adulthood, maybe into your early 20s, and not about struggling with an eating disorder later in life. In this case, I believe she is 50 or around 50, so that's not an age group where you often hear narratives of eating disorder and relapses, and that meant a lot to me. It's also extremely well written, as all of her work, and I really recommend this memoir. It's probably going to come out in paperback this year, so look out for it. In a similar line, after Sarah Moss's book, I read this collection of essay called Dead Weight. The cover is very pink, but don't let this put you off. Emmeline Klein's style was new to me. It felt almost like every chapter is a long-form magazine essay around a topic, and the way she jumps from subject to subject and thought to thought can feel a little random, but it always circles back to where she started, and at the end you can see that the different strands were all connected, although the leaps weren't always entirely logical, to my mind at least. And I think her style is what struck me most. But what this book is about is disordered eating, and to an extent eating disorders as well, through the lens of culture, media representation, and what it means for contemporary feminism. It's just very clever, very creative. For anyone who has an interest in weight and relationship to one's weight and body and eating disorders, or at least disordered eating, I think it makes for really, really good reading. And finally, I was really interested in this magazine that my partner got for me, actually, called Poem as a Journal. It's an art journal that looked at the poem in a very open-ended way, as not just a literary poem, but potentially an object or a visual representation. And so within its pages, you can find, for example, this artwork that plays with words as visual art. This is by Babi Badalov. Or sometimes you find actual poems spread out on the pages very beautifully. Or this is Christine Herzer, who wrote this simple in terms of language, but visually powerful poem hanging from a tree. Other examples are these folded book pages by Emma Bone that create astonishing poems, but also objects like the sculptures here in a Harold Zeman's exhibition that in a way are arranged like words or lines in a poem. So very creative, and for me broadens the idea I have around poetry. If you follow this channel, you know how interested I am in collage and poetry and mixing those forms of visual and literary through, collage and erasure. So this magazine really stood out for me. It's just the one issue that is published by the Lithuanian Culture Institute. I will post the link in the description. I think it could appeal to some of my followers who are also straddling the lines between literature and visual arts. And so that was a big discovery. Alright, this feels like a very quick overview of what I read in 2024, but it's always difficult to choose favorites. But I thought I would highlight some of them and talk about some of them. And if you are interested, I am linking to all of the books below. You can order them from the UK, or if you're not in the UK, find a local library or an online bookshop that can deliver them to you. Let me know what your favorite books of 2024 were in the comments below, and also whether any of these books speak to you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you again in the next video very soon. Bye!